right when you're hungry and your stomach is kind of growling and your brain is telling you, Saad, reach for that piece of food, if you push through it, there's a superpower on the other side, which is your body starts mobilizing your carbohydrate source to your fat source, and that's when the ketones start generating. And if you can get to the other side, there's a tremendous amount of clarity.
So the intermittent fasting and the fasting, because it gets you into that ketosis to a certain extent, is good for your brain. It's good for your gut. It's good for your for the aging process. It triggers longevity genes, but in particular, it's really good for your for sugar metabolism.
Health, fitness, mindset, nutrition. Live better and longer. I'm Saad Alam, and let's hone in. So I don't know if you know this, but I actually started fasting right around the time I met you and because of you. And I remember I was in your office and I was telling you, Frank, I actually don't like fasting. I get really hungry about the 12-ish hour mark. And you helped me change my perspective, which is you said, think about it this way. Right when you're hungry and your stomach is kind of growling and your brain is telling you, Saad, reach for that piece of food, if you push through it, there's a superpower on the other side, which is your body starts mobilizing your carbohydrate source to your fat source, and that's when the ketones start generating. And if you can get to the other side, there's a tremendous amount of clarity.
Yeah, there's clarity, and it's just good for your metabolism. It's good for your, so many people, I was pre-diabetic too. One of the best ways to manage sugar dysregulation is intermittent fasting. So the intermittent fasting and the fasting, because it gets you into that ketosis to a certain extent, is good for your brain. It's good for your gut. It's good for your for the aging process. It triggers longevity genes, but in particular, it's really good for your for sugar metabolism. Some people lose weight. Not everyone loses weight with it, but some people do. And I think part of that is because, your insulin levels drop. But not everyone loses weight. But as a general rule, it's good for sugar dysregulation, for, insulin resistance and aging in general.
What does that mean, insulin resistance?
So the way I explain it to people is you don't just become diabetic. Mm-hmm. It starts off with you just not metabolizing sugar properly, and when that happens, you have to create more insulin to help the sugar get into the cells. And the more that's happening in your body, your cells get resistant to the insulin, so your body has to create more insulin. Mm-hmm. So after that's been going on for a while, you then become pre-diabetic. When that's been going on for a while, you become diabetic. So sort of the spectrum of sugar dysregulation, insulin resistance, pre-diabetes, diabetes. So most of us are somewhere along the spectrum. Insulin resistance is it's not early, but it's an earlier phase in pre-diabetes.
What are other hormonal changes that happen as a result of fasting? Because there are a lot of just superpowers.
One of the things that you probably would be interested in, or biohackers are interested in, can increase growth hormone.
Yep.
But it's going to affect a lot of your hormones. The big ones, I think, are insulin and growth hormone, but the other, all the hormones work together. It's a symphony. But the ones that we think about with fasting are really insulin, probably a bit of growth hormone.
Is there any way that I can increase my growth hormone even more by fasting? Or is it kind of like once you start, it's at a relatively stable?
Well, it's a harder hormone to measure, although you can measure it. I think so many factors influence growth hormone. Fasting is just one of them. Mm-hmm. Exercising is going to help. Sleep.
Yep.
We should talk about sleep. Sleep is a huge anti-aging. I take testosterone as we get older. I think it becomes more and more important. But I think just relying on the hormones and not making the lifestyle changes is not the right way of doing it.
I couldn't agree with you more. And I actually believe you shouldn't even consider or think about hormones unless you're not sleeping right, unless
Yeah.
you're not eating right, unless you figured out how to reduce your stress, unless you're drinking enough water.
Yeah.
I think it is only after those should you even be thinking about this as an option for me, because the reality is most of everything that we go through can just be fixed if you take a little bit care of yourself.